And the reason, from a religious education standpoint, we look at making an effort for catechesis for persons with disabilities, because the love of the Father and the continuous presence of Jesus and his Spirit give assurance that every person, however limited, is capable of growth in holiness. And that's an incredibly important statement. You know, you have to really keep in mind that it's every person. Every person is capable of growth in holiness. So when we talk of our students with special needs, we have to think about ourselves. Who are they? And we have to remember they're brothers, they're sisters, they're friends. They're young, they're old, they're Black, they're white. They are of every culture. Disabilities does not discriminate. They might have motor difficulties. They might have sensory difficulties. They might have speech difficulties or social difficulties. They might have learning disabilities. But because they're children of God, they deserve the opportunity to be in a relationship with God, to know him, to love him, to serve him, and to be with him in eternal life. And our job is to provide the opportunity for that relationship. But I always tell the priests that it is Jesus's job to accommodate himself to come to each of us at our own level of understanding so that that relationship can develop. So we're going to talk today about providing opportunities for a relationship with Jesus. The National Directory for Catechesis states that all persons with disabilities have the capacity to proclaim the gospel and to be living witnesses to its truth within the community of faith and offer valuable gifts. Their involvement enriches every aspect of church life. They are not just the recipients of catechesis, they are also its agents. And I always like to emphasize that every single human being has grace. And that grace is something that they should be allowed to share. And you know, sadly, we still have situations where someone might be seen as you know, it might be too difficult or distracting, something like that. But that is never the case. We all need to realize that we all have grace and can share that grace. So why do we catechize and why do the sacraments exist? And I loved this statement. It's just really simple and beautiful. For the same reason that the incarnation occurred. God desires access to our hearts and to our world. And God will not rest until each one of us has access to the love that saves. And so again, we're providing an opportunity for that relationship as we move forward with the work of catechesis. So specific to special education, today we're going to look at some strategies, some resources, different models that might be useful in your parishes, and also some programs that we have developed at the Archdiocese of Atlanta that we're very, very happy to share. So let's start with strategies, and this would be where you might want to jot some questions when you see something that might be highlighted. So some of the things to think about with strategies are sensory awareness. Sensory issues are huge, and we'll talk about that. Adaptations, how to adapt material. And we will, in the breakout group shortly, we will be able to work on having those, exploring how to do adaptations. Communication, how to communicate. Often, I like to tell people, sometimes you get better attention when you slow down and lower your voice. But at the same time, someone else may not have expressive language. So how do you know that they are involved and participating in their learning? And we're going to also look at some best practices. So for sensory, these are kind of common sense things. And these are difficult because as catechists, you're not in a room that you get to set up and leave typically every time to have it be the way you want it. So you just have to think really quickly as you get into your learning space. Is the room too hot or too cold? You know, typically if a room's too hot, that's going to cause people to be more tired. Are the lights too bright or not bright enough? Vision is one of the most important issues when it comes to learning. Different types of seating. You know, it's tough when you have hard chairs. The children have already sat in chairs all day at school for those that are going to school, and then they come in and we're telling them they have to sit again. And so you need to know whether a cushion might help or a beanbag, something like that. Allowing for fidget, something that is able to be held and just squeezed or manipulated, something that helps calm a child, or a favorite item. I have one student who his favorite item are little cars, and he loves cars. And we started with him allowing him to have the cars, and then he had to earn the cars, and then he finished the year without needing the cars. So we were able to use the cars to engage him originally, but then he realized he didn't need them. Another thing is the opportunity to move. It's so important for the brain to have that movement connection. And a big statement that I always encourage people to remember of all of these, if you could just remember these last two: change the environment and not the child. If you can change the environment, you'll have so much more success. And allowing for processing time. It is amazing how many children have auditory processing issues these days. And so if you do something, say, Johnny, I know that you are thinking through your answer. I'll come back to you in a minute. And just give him the time to process his answer. You'll find that the children will respond. So how do you make things visual and interactive? And using the hook and loop adhesive dots, Velcro dots is the easiest way to think of them. Those are great things because you can take different pictures or words and put those together and have students move them around as part of a lesson. So they're actually, instead of just sitting there and listening all the time, they're actually engaged in learning. Laminating materials so you can use them over and over again is just good practices, best practices. It also helps for our students who might have wet hands. Songs and music and simple instruments that either they can make during one class that might go with the lesson or use later on. Acting out, we just have incredible Bible stories that can be presented so simply. And when you act those out, it just helps, again, reinforce that lesson. And pairing scents and smells with your content. You know, the Catholic Church is very, very rich in scents and smells. And that is a huge one. The brain learns new information when it does things 3 different times, 3 different ways. And so, and your sense of smell is your most strongest sense because it's the closest sense from a connection standpoint in the brain. And a lot of times we forget to use that in a classroom setting, but it's very, very important. So just an example about an adaptation. A book might be read to the student, or the student reads the book, or it can be recorded on a tape player, which I used to use all the time, or a cell phone. They can use headphones if needed. A lot of times our friends with autism, headphones are a wonderful learning tool. You can copy a book into PowerPoint, and if you have a computer or television where you can hook up your computer, allow the students to engage with the reading that way. And also tactile stimulus. Tactile stimulus is huge. If we say that Jesus wiped, or Veronica wiped the face of Jesus is a good example. So you could have a picture of a woman who's got maybe, something that represents hair, and then a cloth, and then another face, so that they can actually feel that cloth. It's really tactile, making lessons tactile is a huge, huge learning opportunity. Visual symbols, again, sometimes our students are not as typical readers, and so when we have a visual symbol, that helps them. Playing games is another great way, or adapting games, like from game shows with religious theme. Playing bingo with concepts and vocabulary. Vocabulary is incredibly, incredibly important, and especially in our Hispanic community. When my experience, I'm not Hispanic, but my experience working in the public school system, and then also in the religious ed setting with our Hispanic families, is there is not a lot of discussion about these concepts that we have in the Catholic Church. And so you have to really build that prior knowledge. So, you have to explain where things were in the Bible at the time. And there's some really great activities that you can do with bingo doing that. And that Who Am I game, where the kids love it, where they hold a picture of someone up to their head, and then everyone's trying to describe who it is, and they have to guess the person who's holding it up to their head. The kids absolutely love that. I'm not sure why, but they do. And this is very important too. You want to have in your toolkit, when you come in for a lesson, you want to have your materials at different complexity levels, because you're not going to have 6 children who all are the same age, most likely, who all are the same age with the same ability from a reading standpoint, or the same cognitive ability. So having something that's a little harder for one and maybe a little easier for another is just a super idea. Pictures with print, color coding, I talked about in the prayer. Enlarging pictures so you have 2 different sizes. And we talked about tactile materials, but I always give students whose reading levels are lower an opportunity to use pre-printed words that they glue and attach. So think about the Hail Mary that we did. They could take those strips that were color-coded but put them in order. And that is actually writing. You know, it's just a different way to do writing. The other thing I wanted to, I don't think I mentioned it, but when we talked about the doing simple plays, one of the greatest tools you can have are plastic tablecloths that you can get at the dollar store in just different colors. And you can cut those up. You can have one be a sash, one can be around a head, one can be a dress. You know, it's the most wonderful tool for your classroom, and they're very, very inexpensive. And along these lines of adaptations, I just want you to think for a minute, what is literacy? What components make up literacy? So in the public school system, what we talk about for literacy is literacy's 4 different things. It's reading, it's writing, it's listening, and it's comprehension. So by adapting writing or adapting how someone can listen, you're providing them with the opportunity for religious literacy. And that's what we want to do, is we want to build religious literacy. And also, all these materials that you're able to make for your classroom, you certainly want to send them home, because we want the home, you know, parents are the first teachers of their children. We respect that, but we also want to support our parents. And by sending things that children can take home to reinforce a lesson, it's a great idea. For my Hispanic students, because they are learning in English in the classroom, typically what I do is I prepare a take-home activity in both English and Spanish, because that way the student can share with the parent in English, but the parent will have access to it in Spanish. And again, because literacy levels are different, I try to keep things simple, but address the curriculum. And you'll get some examples of this later in the afternoon, or at the end of the session. The other thing too with adaptations and making lessons, I would highly encourage you to use your youth and your teen groups, because you could give them an idea in the youth group and say, I need someone to make a lesson on the resurrection. Who can help? I'd love to meet with you all, even on Zoom. Who's got some ideas and what can we do? And what that does, even if you're having them just cut out lessons that you prepared yourself, they're still looking at it. And it gives them the opportunity to reinforce their own learning. My daughter's a dancer. She's been a dancer for 26 years. And I always tell her, you can go back to the basics. And it's never a waste of time to go back to the basics. And that is definitely the same for our teens. So I'll give you a minute to maybe write down some questions that you might have about adaptations. And we're going to move. These are things we've already addressed. Move on to communication. So I want everyone to think about communication. What do you think behavior is? And I will tell you that behavior is communication. So when you have students who, or even your own children, who are getting frustrated and and can't find a way to tell you what it is they need, and they start to act out, it's actually they're trying to communicate. And so what we want to do in our religious ed settings is really the last one on this page is the most important. Check with the parents to see how the child communicates at home. And if you can understand how mom and dad or grandma and grandpa might work with a student at home, it will be easier for you in your classroom. You want to use the level of language that's appropriate for learners. So again, if you have high functioning learners in your classroom, you don't want to dumb down your language for them, but you might have to simplify what you say to another student. Abstract concepts. This is hugely important for children with autism. Children with autism do not understand abstract concepts until they're taught. They need real examples. So you can't say, stop that. They do not know what that is. You have to say, stop kicking the chair with your feet. Put your feet on the floor. It makes a huge difference in a setting when you start to see that someone might be getting a little frustrated. Using communication systems with students who are nonverbal. We'll be sharing some pictures that you can use. Some students have communication devices from school. I've actually had speech therapists who have programmed into communication device the Catholic prayers. We were doing a first Eucharist class, and we did his first reconciliation prayers into his communication device. I taught the priest how to use it so that when they were together for that first reconciliation, Eric could say his act of contrition just by pressing a switch. And he was able, therefore, to participate. That's an independent participation. He has learned how to use that device. He's independently participating in his first reconciliation. So those are things, there's often experts in the diocese who are volunteers or maybe volunteers. Reach out to Terry if you ever have a need for that. And if she can't find someone, I can help with communication devices. Using a picture and print schedule. This is number one. And we'll be giving you a couple examples of that. Again, for students with autism, but really for all kids, especially young kids, they just like to know what's going to happen. And I would highly suggest that you keep your activities fairly similar each week. It just lets them know what's coming up next. Always review the schedule at the beginning of the class and then throughout the session. If you can't sit still, have them get up and move the schedule. And really, interactive activities are the best. You want to limit downtime. If you can rotate your activities every 5 to 10 minutes, it really keeps children interested. Again, I mentioned the fidgets and things like using stickers or a spinner in your classroom. There's very simple you can make little homemade spinners, and they love to be able to sit there, and we play bingo with spinners in the classroom where they have to match pictures. And creating a visual behavior chart if you need to, where someone would earn a reinforcer for good behavior. The key with behavior is to highlight the positives. Again, too, for students with autism, you can't say good job. Good job doesn't mean anything to them. You have to say, thank you for reading that gospel. You spoke slowly and very clearly. They love praise, they want praise, but they have to understand what they're being praised for. So I think here, before we go ahead, I'm going to show you just a couple things. Let me pull it up. I wanted to show you some of the adapted lessons. So you'll be getting a few of these lessons, and I'm just going to show you. So this is in Spanish. So this is an example of adapting for different levels.
Hey, you're still seeing the prayer.
Oh, you are? Okay.
If you're going to be going between ones, it's when you go to share, it might be good to share the desktop.
Okay.
And then whenever you click in between, we'll see everything.
Very good. Let me find the desktop. Let's go there.
Might have to quit sharing and then.
Yeah.
Go.
All right. Do we see the Blessed Mother?
Yes, with Spanish.
Yes. Okay. So this is an example that I talked about with different levels for a lesson. So here's our full picture. Here's our full picture. So this could be there, and this is a puzzle activity. So this could be there, I just taped this up on the board so the students can look at it. So we have the actual picture. The students can cut it out, or it could already be laminated and on the desk, and they could go up and just match it to the picture that we just showed. These are bigger pieces on this puzzle. So someone who's fine motor skills maybe not be as refined. This is a good alternative for them with bigger pieces. This is just the blank. And so we would take that previous picture, but it's got a highlight in the back. So someone who might need a little bit of help could put the puzzle together with this little bit of support. And then a blank page. Someone who can just look at the one that's complete up on the board and put the puzzle together, or doesn't need to look at the one on the board and put the puzzle together. So this is an example of just how to differentiate that learning for students who are at different levels in your classroom setting. All right, and let me pull up one more. I want the adapted lesson and okay. So this is an example of just taking a book, a very simple book that we made, and having it just be simple and acting it out. So let the children come to me. Oh. The children were brought to Jesus. So someone could act as Jesus, again, using the plastic tablecloth. They could have it wrapped around their head. And he's welcoming the children. And the other students are being asked to go to be taken to Jesus. That he might lay his hands on them and pray. And Jesus, could act as if he was going to pray. But the disciples rebuke them. So someone else could act as a disciple with the plastic tablecloth again, draped a different way. And Jesus said, stop. Let the children come to me and do not prevent them. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. And after he placed his hands on them and went away. So this is just a very simple way to take that gospel and adapt it to something that can be acted out. It can be, you're doing a lot of different things here. They can read it first. They can act it out. They can change roles, don't always have the same person be Jesus. And then they can talk about, why did the disciples stop and not want Jesus to see the children? Why did Jesus want to see the children? And so these are just things that you can really easily, this little lesson, I don't think it took 15 minutes to put together for a class. And I even made a stop sign for the person who acted as a disciple, because that child was nonverbal, but he just held out the stop sign. So at this point, I want to just go through and see if we have any questions on the first half of the day.